Rain stitched the city together with silver thread, every drop a tiny warning on glass. Crystal Miller locked the side door of Delaney's diner, tips folded tight in a rubber band, keys threaded between her fingers like teeth. 2 blocks to the bus, 2 blocks to a mattress that remembered better days. She pulled her hood up and kept moving, steps small, quick, practiced. "Hey, sweetheart." A voice slithered from the mouth of an alley. "Smile for me." She didn't look. The trick with danger was not giving it a face. Footsteps slid closer. A hand snapped around her wrist, greasy, entitled. "Don't be rude. Let me see those eyes." Pain shot up her arm. She didn't gasp. Fear wasted time. "Let go," she said, steady. "Now." A second presence arrived, quiet as a breath pulled between teeth. A hand, larger, colder, deliberate, closed on the man's throat, thumb pinning the soft spot beneath the jaw. The attacker's heels left the ground by an inch, just enough to make air a negotiation. "Touch her again," the newcomer murmured, voice low enough that only the 3 of them could hear it. "And I'll kill you." Traffic kept going. Neon bled into puddles. The city did what cities do when monsters enforce rules. Looked the other way. Crystal turned, pulse a drum in her ears, and finally saw him. Not a stranger. Not really. The jaw the papers liked, the suit that didn't know how to wrinkle, the kind of presence that quieted rooms by existing. Leo Romano. She had heard his name between coffee orders and closing shifts. The way people mention weather and God. The attacker clawed at Leo's wrist. Leo didn't squeeze harder. He shifted the angle, a lesson instead of an execution. "You'll walk away," he said, eyes flat and clear. "You won't look at her again. If you do, I'll know." The man nodded, face mottled, the word sorry rasping like sand. Leo dragged him to the alley wall, let him fold, and took 1 step back as if the world were dirty and he'd promised his tailor he'd try. He looked at Crystal then, not scanning, not stripping, just seeing. "Are you hurt?" "No." The word came out smaller than she liked. "I'm fine." "You headed somewhere safe?" "Bus stop." She lifted her chin. "I don't need an escort." "I'll walk you anyway," he said, not a question. He kept a respectful distance, hands visible, posture unthreatening. As they moved, she noticed what most wouldn't. He matched her pace, never cutting in front, never behind. The choreography of someone who had learned how to take up less air when necessary. "What's your name?" he asked. "Crystal Miller." Saying it made the night feel more solid. "Leo," he said, as if the rest of his name didn't echo off skyscrapers. "I apologize for entering your life without permission." "I don't apologize for stopping him." She almost smiled. Noted. They reached the bus shelter, a flicker of fluorescent pretending to be safety. A black sedan idled a car length away, rain beating on paint like quiet applause. Leo took out a card, clean and brutal. Leo Romano and a number, nothing else. He held it between 2 fingers. "You won't need this," he said. "But if you do, use it once. I'll answer." Her bus shouldered up to the curb, brakes sighing. Crystal put the card in her pocket for no reason she would admit to. She climbed the steps and felt his gaze on her back exactly until the doors hissed shut, no longer. The city smeared past in wet neon. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Nice protector. Careful who you smile at. The text sat there like a thumbprint on glass. She didn't reply. She watched her reflection instead, eyes too tired, mouth set to survive. Across town, Leo slid into the back of the sedan. His driver adjusted the mirror. Leo adjusted the night. A notification pulsed on a secure thread. A freeze frame of the alley from high and far, the way a hunter sees. In the chrome of a parked car's side mirror, a round glass eye stared back. A lens. The plate reflected in that same chrome belonged to a rental hidden inside a corporation he recognized from older wars. A shell Viscari liked to wear when he wanted deniability. Leo's jaw flexed once. "Save the image," he said. "Flag the plate. If it moves, we move faster." "Yes, sir." He should have let the moment go, send an envelope, make a call, press a lever and be done. Instead, he found himself asking a question that didn't belong to the man he had learned to be. Why her? No one answered. Questions like that are the beginning of trouble. Crystal got off 3 stops early and walked the last blocks home because motion felt like control. Her building smelled like damp carpet and boiled cabbage. She checked the second-story window, a habit, and climbed the stairs. An envelope waited on her welcome mat. No stamp, no address. She stood there a moment, listening to the hallway breathe, and then took it inside. She opened it with a butter knife by the sink because ceremony helps courage. Photos slid out, grainy prints of the alley, the attacker's twisted face, her profile in rain. Across the last photo, black marker carved a message. Stay away from him. Second chances are expensive. Crystal stared until the letters blurred, and then she put the photos back in the envelope, tucked the envelope in the freezer under a bag of peas, and laughed once, sharp, humorless, at herself. She washed her hands. She washed the knife. She locked the deadbolt. She made tea she didn't drink. The phone card in her pocket warmed against her leg. Don't, she told herself. Don't pull a fire alarm for smoke. Her phone buzzed again. A second unknown number this time, like the same mouth changing its voice. We're watching your door. A beat. Don't bring him here. She dialed before she could think better. The line picked up on the second ring. Crystal, Leo said, as if her name belonged in his mouth. Are you home? You shouldn't know my name from a number. You shouldn't be threatened for walking down a street. His voice didn't soften. It steadied. Tell me what you received. Photos, she said. A note. They want distance. Distance gives hunters patience, he said. My driver will be there in 6 minutes. 3, she said, because if she had to be afraid, she'd be specific about it. A brief silence she almost mistook for a laugh. 3. She slid the envelope from the freezer and tucked it into her backpack. When she opened the door, rain breathed on the threshold. A black sedan idled at the curb, the same patient geometry as before. The driver didn't look at her. Respect or training. Leo was waiting at the club he used when he needed privacy that smelled like old songs instead of cold steel. The jazz stage slept, the grand piano a dark animal reflecting ceiling lamps. His men were in the corners if you knew how corners work. He led her to a table on the edge of the stage and sat forward, elbows on knees. Attention a gift he didn't give cheaply. They sent the threat to scare you away from me, he said, which makes me wonder what happens if you stay. I don't want to stay anywhere, she said, honest because lying took energy she needed for rent. I want to work my shift and make my bus. Good. Routine is a weapon. He nodded at the envelope. May I? She slid it over. He laid out the photos like cards a magician didn't need to trick. His gaze paused on the angle of one shot, the glint on chrome that made a lens out of rain. Viscari, he said. I don't know him. She hesitated. I know his name like I know hurricanes have categories. Leo's mouth tilted. He prefers other people's hands and other people's cameras. This fits. How do you make it stop? I don't promise what I can't deliver, he said, but I can promise this. You won't be alone in it. Her phone buzzed, a live feed request. Against every rule, she opened it. The camera shook, moved, and settled on the front glass of Delaney's. A red dot pulsed on the window, fresh paint or a cheap laser. She couldn't tell. My job, she said, already up. We'll be there before the worst can, Leo answered, already moving. They reached the diner to nothing but rain and that single red circle smiling like a dare. Paul, the manager, flapped apologies. Detective Alvarez appeared out of nowhere, hands in his pockets, eyes on everything. Leo didn't bark orders, he placed them, and the room obeyed by getting safer. Crystal stood under the awning and let the rain speckle her shoes. I won't run, she said. Then we fight smart, Leo replied. Let me set a net. And what does your net catch? Whoever thinks you are bait, he said, and for reasons she wouldn't examine, she believed him. Back home, Crystal shut her door and leaned into it, counting 10 slow breaths. She put Leo's card in her wallet, behind the bus pass, where miracles didn't usually go. The apartment settled around her. Thin walls, honest noises. On the table, the photos waited like a test she hadn't studied for. She didn't notice her hand shaking until the kettle began to scream. Across the city, a private channel lit up Leo's phone with a new image. The attacker from the alley, later that night, passing a man a folded envelope. The man's face wasn't clear, but the posture was relaxed, proprietary, as if the street owed him rent. Marco. Leo stared until the pixels organized themselves into memory. Two boys under a summer fence, swearing they'd be each other's armor. The present did what it always does, broke the oath into edges. He closed his eyes for one slow count. When he opened them, the man the city feared had returned to the room. At dawn, Crystal stepped over a small square on her welcome mat, an unmarked box she hadn't heard arrive. Inside lay a modest silver locket and a note, found at Delaney's Lost and Found. Thought it was yours. L. She didn't own a locket, and Leo hadn't sent the note. The box was the size of a palm and weighed almost nothing. Crystal turned it over once, twice, no postmark, no address, the tape cut clean as a surgeon's stitch. The note inside said it came from Leo. The script was neat, spare. The locket lay on black cotton like a modest moon. She didn't own anything that pretty. She set it on the table and stared until the kettle clicked itself off. A corner of her mind counted rent, bus times, the way the ceiling paint peeled in the shape of Florida. The rest of her waited for the feeling that had saved her more than locks, the grit under the pearl. It arrived late, but loud. Crystal lifted the locket by its chain. Cool metal, clean face, no initials. She almost laughed at herself, paranoid, overclocked, when a small chill walked between her shoulder blades with the certainty of a truth that doesn't need proof. She closed the box and slid it into her backpack. If there was a trap, she'd rather spring it where she could watch it break. The street wore the last threads of night. She texted a single word to the number on Leo's card. Talk. The reply came before she'd put the phone away. Club, side door, no name, no pleasantries. The kind of message that didn't ask for permission because it never learned the word. Inside the jazz club, afternoon dust had not yet woken. The stage lights were low, and the piano threw back the room with a soft black mirror. Leo stood near the bar, suit without a wrinkle, attention without a price tag. Two of his men existed only if you knew where to look. Crystal placed the box on the bar between them. You didn't send this, she said. He didn't pretend to examine the note like it might change if he stared long enough. He scanned once, then again, mouth a thin line. No, he said. I didn't. Someone wants me to believe you did. Someone wants us to skip steps. He pivoted the box with a thumb. Did you wear it? No. Good. He nodded to a man who knew which drawer held the ultraviolet lamp and which held the quiet panic. The lamp washed the note in a violet tide. A faint fingerprint ghosted at the corner. Too clean, too intentional. Delaney's Lost and Found? He asked. Manager swears he didn't see it, she said. But the rumor arrived before breakfast. The mob king's shadow on the diner girl. My tips started dying of sudden shame. Leo's gaze lingered on her face as if sorting through lines on a map. I can move you out of town for a week. And gift wrap my life to whoever's watching the silence? No. She folded her arms. I go to work. I keep my shift. If they want to scare me out of routine, they can try paying my rent. He almost smiled. Routine is a weapon, he said again, as if the phrase tasted right in his mouth. Then we use yours. Her phone buzzed. A number she didn't recognize, a video link, a caption, smile for the camera. Against every rule, she opened it. The picture jittered, found focus, and settled on the front of Delaney's. A fresh red dot bloomed on the glass. Crystal's chair scraped. My job. We're already there, Leo said, pocketing the note. Don't argue. He looked at her, not past her. Come with me. They hit the street before panic could remember its choreography. The black sedan breathed them across town with the patience of money. Delaney's glinted dumbly under a gray morning. The red dot smiled from the window like it knew something they didn't. Paul, the manager, was all apologies and damp forehead. "Must be kids," he began. "Kids don't scrub metadata," Leo said, eyes on the roofline. "Go inside, Paul." Detective Alvarez leaned in the doorway, a cup of black coffee steaming fog into the rain. He nodded to Leo, then to Crystal. "Busy week." "I'd like a quiet one," she said. "Tell me how," Alvarez replied, deadpan. Then let the silence fill in its own joke. Leo's people fanned, one to the lamppost, one to the awning brackets, one to the alley with the green dumpster that sometimes hosted bad decisions. A woman in a jogging poncho slowed to watch, then thought better of it. Somewhere a bus sighed. Life insisted on happening. "Inside," Leo said to Crystal, "show me the camera angles." "How do you know we have cameras?" she asked. "Everyone does," he said, "even when they don't want to." They stood in the cramped office by the back door where Delaney's stored napkins, a first aid kit, and one tired security DVR. Crystal pulled the feeds. Screen after screen stuttered forward, then blinked to black, then resumed, each gap clipped as clean as if someone had taught time to skip. "Cut at the recorder," Leo said, "not the cables." "So someone was in here," Crystal said, throat tight. "Or owning the system from a block away," he answered. "Show me the window cam." She did. The one that should have caught the red dot's painter cut out at 4:11, returned at 4:19, as if the morning had simply refused to exist for 8 minutes. They scrubbed again, frame by frame, until Crystal's finger froze on the trackpad. "There," she said. Reflected in the polished edge of the metal napkin dispenser by booth 3, a slice of a man's face in the glass, the suggestion of a shoulder, the posture of someone who wasn't here for eggs. The resolution fought them. The lines fought back. But Crystal had been serving long enough to know the difference between a customer and a problem. Leo didn't speak for a count of 5. His eyes were a weather report the city should have learned to read. "Enhance," he said, and the tech they'd smuggled in did his best to make ghosts sit still. The outline resolved just enough to make the shape of the nose, the hairlines angle, the way the mouth held itself like it had been taught not to flinch. Familiar hit the room like a dropped tray. "Marco," Crystal said before she could stop the word. Leo's jaw didn't move. His hand did, a fraction, a tightening, a release. "Coincidence," he said. It didn't sound like belief. It sounded like grief with its last clean shirt on. Detective Alvarez drifted to the office door as if he'd been casually blown there by weather. "Something I should see?" Leo didn't turn. "Just routine." Alvarez's eyes touched the screen, touched Leo, touched Crystal's fists. "Routine is how we survive storms," he said, almost kindly. "But even routines drown." He left them with the smell of coffee and a promise to swing back later that felt like a question mark with a badge. Leo leaned closer to the screen, looking at the reflection like it owed him an apology. "I don't move on smoke," he said, more to himself than to her. "Then let's find fire," Crystal answered. She glanced at the box in her backpack. "Start with the thing someone wanted me to wear." Back in the club, a tech in a sweater that had seen better semesters opened the locket with a tool that looked like it should tune violins. He peered, whistled low, and angled the lamp. "Embedded where the chain met the hinge, a fleck of something not jewelry." "Transmitter," he said. "Passive until it wakes. Range depends on the piggyback." Leo's gaze flicked to Crystal. She didn't flinch. "Can it be turned," she asked, "into something that listens to the right people?" The tech blinked. "A live pass-through? Piggyback on a frequency they think is theirs?" He looked at Leo, half scared, half thrilled. "Yes, if you want it fast." "I want it exact," Leo said. "And I want it before someone decides to graduate from paint." Crystal exhaled slowly, the sound of a choice hardening. "So we let them hear what they expect. Me scared, me running, and instead we make them talk." Leo's eyes warmed by a degree you'd miss if you hadn't been cold all winter. "You don't have to." I know, she cut in, and that's why I can. He nodded once, as if she'd passed a test no one should have to take. He turned to the tech. Wire it. Route the output to a channel the city can't ignore. The cops? The tech asked, already opening a case of parts that glittered like tiny intentions. Some of them, Leo said. One in particular. Alvarez, Crystal said softly. Leo didn't confirm, didn't need to. By late afternoon, the club sounded like tools and soft curses. The locket lay in pieces that looked like guilt cut into jewelry. Crystal paced the length of the room and back, counting the boards, rewriting what courage meant with each lap. She answered Delaney's texts with plausible lies. Power's out, new schedule later, and ignored the way her phone kept catching signal and losing it like a breath. Hungry? Leo asked, appearing with a paper bag that smelled like sesame and heat. Yes, she said, surprised by the honesty of it. They ate at the bar like two people who had been told to be civilized at the end of the world. He used chopsticks like a man who respected small skills. She burned her mouth on the first bite and pretended not to. You play? She asked, nodding at the piano. Poorly, he said, carefully. Careful is allowed, she said. He touched 3 notes. The room forgave itself for a minute. The tech cleared his throat. Done. It'll sit dead until triggered. When it wakes, it rides on a public safety channel with a delay of exactly nothing. If someone brags, the right ears grow. Leo nodded. Good. Crystal reached for the chain. He didn't stop her. The locket sat cool against her collarbone, then warmer, then like nothing at all. She resisted the urge to scratch where metal met skin. What now? She asked. Now, Leo said. We let your routine do what routines do. He checked his watch. Shift starts soon. She hesitated. If someone's listening, they'll want me alone. You won't be, he said, even when you are. The line would have sounded like theater from anyone else. From him, it felt like a building permit for courage. He walked her to the club's side door. Rain rehearsed a new scene. The street smelled like wet brick and coffee filters. His men blended into the world like punctuation marks you didn't notice until a sentence needed meaning. Crystal, he said before she stepped out. If you feel watched, it's because you are. But not only by enemies. Good, she said. Let them compete. She took the bus because abandoning her rhythm would teach the wrong lesson. She counted 3 stops. She counted 2 men who counted her. She stepped down at Delaney's and felt the day shiver, as if the city had been waiting for her to arrive to remember what happened next. Inside, the evening crowd braided itself into a warm noise. Lynn mouthed, "You okay?" And Crystal nodded, a lie that would become true if she worked hard enough. She poured coffee, wiped a counter, laughed at a joke that didn't deserve it. She felt the locket sit against her pulse like a small metallic decision. At 9:17, her phone buzzed. A text with no punctuation. Look behind you. She did, casual as a cat. In the mirror behind the pie case, past the reflection of her own shoulder, a man sat alone in booth 3, profile turned just enough to be no one. He left a minute later, tip exact to the cent, a folded napkin under the sugar dispenser with a blue ink eye drawn on it. She waited until the bell over the door stopped ringing, until the room remembered how to breathe. Then she slid the napkin into her apron pocket and glanced at the window. The red dot was gone. Outside, in the greasy dark near the dumpster, she caught the glint of something small and round where metal met brick. An eye that wasn't human. She didn't touch it. She smiled at her own reflection in the glass as if nothing were wrong, and carried pie to a couple who looked like they were deciding to forgive each other. Her phone buzzed once more. Not a text. A system message from a number she didn't have. Mike live. The locket warmed. Crystal breathed, lifted her chin, and said to no one in particular, I don't run. And somewhere, through copper and air, through a frequency that owed no one favors, someone who shouldn't have been listening leaned closer, eager to be heard by themselves. Back in the office, the DVR screen froze mid-frame on a reflected profile. Leo watched the angle, the hairline, the mouth that had been taught not to flinch, and didn't say Marco's name out loud. The locket at Crystal's throat hummed once, like a match struck in a dark room. The message on Crystal's phone was 2 words long, Mike live, but it made the whole diner feel wired. She didn't touch the locket. She didn't touch anything she didn't have to. She poured decaf for the couple on 6 and wiped a clean counter because motion steadied the breath. A man in a ball cap hovered in the vestibule pretending to read the pastry board. In the mirror behind the pie case, his phone rose to his ear, then lowered a fraction, speaker on. He stepped outside, the door chime swallowing the first syllable. Crystal drifted toward the pass. Friars hissed. Lynn lifted a brow. You good? Crystal nodded later. She ducked into the back, pressed her shoulder to the cool cinder block, and let the room's noise blur until the outside voice came through like a whisper that had grown a spine. 411. Same window. Don't be late this time or he'll... The rest dissolved in traffic and rain and a truck downshifting like anger. 411. The exact minute Delaney's front cam had hiccuped this morning. She exhaled through the nose, slow. The locket warmed once, the way metal remembers heat. She heard a second voice now, filtered and thin, as if speaking through teeth. Red dot again. She spooks easy. Make her quit. Crystal's mouth tilted, almost a laugh. Try me. She returned to the front and planted a smile like a flag. The room softened. People ate pancakes. The world pretended this was enough. When her break came, she slipped into the office. The DVR grinned dumbly from the shelf. Leo's tech, sweater, careful hands, sat on a milk crate with a coil of cable in his lap, headphones over one ear. He held up a finger. Wait. He scrubbed back 2 seconds and pressed a key. Voices spilled into the tiny room. 411, red dot. Make her quit. External Mike caught it, he said, eyes bright. Your jewelry did the rest. They're sloppy when they think they're clever. Crystal leaned on the desk. Can you trace the number? Already bouncing, he said. Burner to burner. But they said he and not they. One decision maker. Which one? She asked. But they both knew what name hung in the air. Leo arrived like gravity arriving, quiet, undeniable. He took the headphones, listened without commenting, then set them down as if they might bite. 411, he said. That's a schedule, not a coincidence. And the red dot? Crystal asked. A nudge, he said. They want you to walk away from me, or toward me. Either direction works if they get to choose what happens next. He turned to the tech. Pull everything around that minute from every camera on this block. Reflections, chrome, car windows. If you can make ghosts talk, make them sing. The tech nodded and left to argue with pixels. Leo's gaze found Crystal's hands, the way her knuckles were white around a pen. You don't have to be here for the rest, he said. I do, she answered. Because I was here for the beginning. He acknowledged that with a small tilt of the head. Then come see something you'll hate. He drove her to the club, to the little room behind the bar that had become a war desk. A printout lay pinned beneath a glass. Access logs for a private courier service. Names, signatures, authorizations. Halfway down the page, the delivery that had found her doormat. The signature was spare and decisive. Marco Santori. Crystal stared until the letters blurred, then sharpened again. He sent the locket. He cleared the courier, Leo said, which is the same thing. Why? She asked, less to him than to the past, to whatever crooked line had turned a boy into this. Why go through me? Because I stand still for fewer things than I used to, Leo said, not proud. But if someone touches what I protect, I forget how to move. Is that what I am? What you protect? The question surprised even her as it left her mouth, naked, unarmored. Leo didn't look away. Yes, he said simply, not because you need me, because someone made you a target to reach me. Her throat went tight. She looked at the log again, at the thin authority of the name. You'll confront him. I will verify, Leo said. I will not accuse. There is a difference, and it keeps men alive. The door clicked. Detective Alvarez leaned in with a presence that knew how not to spook skittish truth. He set a folder on the table, flipped it, and slid a still frame free. The alley attacker in a parking lot, passing an envelope to a man in profile. The shoulders were wrong for coincidence. The posture was someone who'd forgotten how to be afraid. "Recognize him?" Alvarez asked. Crystal spoke before she measured it. "Marco." She tasted the name like a bruise. "Leo's friend." Alvarez's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "If you're a witness, Ms. Miller, I can protect you. From everyone." "I don't need protection from everyone," she said. "Just from the ones who think I'm a door." Alvarez nodded as if she'd passed a test he hadn't named. "Fair enough." His eyes flicked to Leo. "The city's listening, Mr. Romano. Might want to speak clearly." Leo didn't rise to the prod. "Clarity isn't always safe for the audience." "Neither is silence," Alvarez said, and let himself out. For a moment the room remembered they were all people, breathing, blinking, trying not to drown in their own edges. Leo rubbed his temple with 2 fingers, a gesture he almost never allowed in public. Crystal exhaled. "I need you to hear something back about me," she said. "So there are no misunderstandings when this keeps getting worse." He looked up, waiting. "My soft place isn't here." She touched the locket. "It's my brother, Jamie. 20. He likes order. He trusts schedules. If someone knocks wrong, he won't answer. If someone breaks the glass, he'll freeze. He can't be collateral." The word was sand in her teeth. "I can't live with that." Leo straightened the papers in front of him, a needless act that kept his hands busy while he made a vow. "No one touches him," he said. "Not while I am what I am." "Say it again," she said, "because echoes make promises stronger. No one touches him." Something inside her unclenched a fraction. She nodded once only. The tech returned with a flash drive and the look of a man who had coaxed a small miracle out of stubborn circuitry. He cued a clip, the diner window at 409, the corridor of glass acting like a thin river. A car door out of frame clicked. The reflection in the napkin dispenser caught a jawline. The chrome on the sugar caddy caught a hand lifting a phone. The stainless rim of the pie dome caught a mouth shaping a word. The word was ready. "Timestamp says he was in place 2 minutes before the blackout in the feed," the tech said, "then gone at 4:19. "Like a rehearsal," Crystal said. "Like a clock," Leo corrected. His eyes went colder. "Which means we can set ours." He sent 2 messages with 2 thumbs and nothing else. Short instructions that moved men who lived at the speed of intent. Then he turned back to Crystal and chose truth over comfort. "I don't know how much of the next part you will hate," he said, "but I can tell you why." "Tell me while we walk," she replied, "so the ground can argue back." They left the club to a sky deciding whether to rain again. On the way to her building, Crystal watched how the city shifted around Leo, how spaces made room for him the way water accepts a boat and also plans how to drown it. 2 teens on bikes ghosted past, looked back. A woman with a stroller lifted her eyes and then quickly lowered them, the way people honor the limits of their courage. At her door, an envelope waited on the mat. No stamp, no return. Crystal's skin crawled, but she picked it up anyway. Inside, 4 photographs, the alley, her face in rain, Leo's hand on a man's throat. And the last, her building, framed from across the street, with a red dot painted on the glass beside her apartment number. She handed it to Leo without speaking. He didn't hiss or curse. He looked at the dot, then at the hallway, then at the small brass peephole that had never felt more like a toy. "Pack a bag," he said. 10 minutes. "I'm not running," she said. "You're not." His voice softened, then didn't. "You're repositioning, Jamie?" "He's at the center," she said. "Volunteer shift till 5. He alphabetizes books no one asked him to alphabetize. It makes his whole day make sense." Leo made a call that sounded like a door locking on the other side of town. "We'll pick him up. He won't know he's being protected. He doesn't need that kind of weight." Crystal packed quick. 3 shirts, 1 sweater, the photo of her mother no one else understood, cash, the bus pass she wasn't ready to give up. She hesitated in the doorway, fingers on the light switch, and then left it off. Some rooms needed to rest. Back in the car, her phone buzzed. New message from an unknown number. You're predictable. Predictability breaks. A second message. 4:19. Check your lights. She didn't answer. She looked at Leo instead. He's telling us the time. He's telling us his religion, Leo said. Ritual. Precision. That's not Viscari's style. He paused. It is Marco's. The air in the car changed shape, as if the truth had mass. They collected Jamie from the thrift shop where he was happiest. He looked up at Crystal with a smile that made the day easier. Chris, the astronaut book came in, hardcover. He noticed Leo, blinked once. You're the man from the news. People say you're bad. I do things that make sense in the dark, Leo said, crouching to Jamie's height without a flicker of pride. I try not to bring them into the light. Jamie considered this. Okay, he said. I like jalapenos on pizza. Leo nodded solemnly. Savage. They settled Jamie with a stack of paperbacks in a safe townhouse that smelled like cedar and old music. Crystal stood in the doorway longer than she needed to, watching her brother trace words with a finger, lips moving. Leo watched her watch him, the vow from earlier sitting between them like a chair no one else would use. Her phone buzzed again, one line only. Tonight, power first. Then smoke. She looked at Leo. They're going to kill the lights. Then they're going to try to teach panic, he said. We'll teach it boredom. How? By being there before the switch, he said. By letting the first part happen and not the second. By seeing who shows up to film the fear they didn't get to sell. Crystal drew a breath that tasted like metal and rain. Okay. She went to work at dusk, because abandoning routine would be a lesson she refused to learn. The diner's neon open hummed. Conversations rose and fell. Somewhere, a clock ticked toward 4:19, not AM, not PM, just the kind of minute that belongs to whoever declares it. At 6:03, the kitchen lights flickered once like a wink from a bad joke. At 6:04, Delaney's went black. The lights died with a sigh. Not a pop, not a spark, just a slow fade into a black thick enough to taste. Conversations froze mid-word. Metal spoons clinked against ceramic like nervous habits. The hum of the refrigerator was gone. The neon sign outside strangled mid-glow. Crystal didn't scream. She didn't move. A blackout in this neighborhood could mean anything. Old wires, new enemies, or a warning to see who ran first. Everybody stay calm, she said, voice sharper than she felt. Her flashlight app lit half her face, pale gold in the dark. The air smelled faintly of ozone, like a fuse had exhaled too hard. She ducked behind the counter, counting heartbeats. The locket on her throat was cool, steady. Then, a faint hum, a click she felt more than heard. It was awake. Lynn, she whispered toward the kitchen. Breaker? Not us, came the answer, shaky but sure. Whole blocks dark. Crystal peered through the window. Most of the street still shimmered under sodium lights. A strip of orange continuing past Delaney's like nothing was wrong. Only her block was dead. A clean line. Someone had carved the dark with intention. Her phone vibrated against the counter. A text with no sender ID. 411. Check your window. Her pulse tripped. She turned slowly. The reflection of her flashlight caught on glass. A small metallic square attached to the frame, blinking once, then still. Not a bomb. A spark starter. A fake fire, designed to sell panic. Don't move, said a voice behind her. She knew that voice before her body did. Leo. He appeared from the shadows of the alley door, black coat damp, rain dripping from his collar. Step away from the panel, he said. They want you to touch it. She froze mid-step. You knew? I guessed, he said, already beside the breaker box, gloved hands working quick. They cut power from the junction, same place they rigged this. You came alone, she whispered. He shook his head. No one ever comes alone. They just pretend better. Outside, the sound of tires rolling slow over wet pavement. A car parked across the street, lights off. A camera lens glinted once. They're filming, Leo murmured. They want footage of chaos. Then give them disappointment, she said. He gave the faintest smile. Exactly. Leo disconnected 2 wires, slid the device into a steel thermos, and sealed it. Done. Before Crystal could speak, the diner's neon flickered back to life, humming like a returning ghost. The customers blinked, muttered, and laughed too loud, the way people do when fear passes before they notice it had teeth. Paul, the manager, rushed out of the kitchen. "Power surge, all under control," he shouted, sweat turning his forehead into glass. "Yeah," Crystal said softly. "Under control." Leo moved close enough for her to smell the rain still clinging to him. "You're fine. I'm not breakable." "I know," he said. "That's what scares them." The bell over the door jingled. Marco stepped in, jacket unbuttoned, charm rehearsed. "Power's back," he said. "Good thing I was nearby." Crystal's spine went cold. Leo didn't turn right away. "Nearby where?" Marco smiled, hands spread. "I was headed home, saw the lights go out. Figured you could use a friendly face." "Friendly?" Crystal said before she could stop herself. "You knew the exact block would go dark?" Marco looked at her like she'd spoken out of turn. "Just lucky timing, Miss Miller." Leo studied his oldest friend's eyes, the same gray he'd seen when they were boys running street corners. "Luck's a thin excuse," he said, "and I don't believe in coincidence." The tension between them could have cut the power again. Marco chuckled, low and easy. "You used to. Back when we were stupid enough to think the world had room for faith." "Faith didn't betray me," Leo said. "People did." A moment of stillness, the kind before thunder. Marco clapped Leo's shoulder. "Don't let ghosts make you paranoid. You're getting old, my friend." He nodded politely to Crystal, eyes lingering too long, and left with the soft jingle of the bell. When the door closed, Leo's jaw stayed locked. "He knew," Crystal said. "He knew exactly when the lights would die." "I know," Leo said quietly. "I saw it in his eyes, but I can't move on suspicion alone." "Then don't move," she said. "Watch." He looked at her, something unreadable behind the storm in his gaze. "You're learning too fast for this world. Maybe your world needed someone to learn." Silence held them, thick and electric. Leo took a step closer, slow, measured. "You think I do this because I don't feel?" "I think you feel too much," she said. "And you built an empire to stop yourself from bleeding." He froze, then laughed. Quiet, genuine. "No one's ever said that to me." "Maybe they should have." He reached up, fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're not afraid?" "I was," she said, "but fear's boring." When he kissed her, it wasn't heat. It was gravity. Gentle, steady, inevitable. The world outside the glass dimmed. Her pulse found a rhythm it hadn't known it missed. Then, bang, the sound of a car door slamming. They pulled apart. Headlights flared across the window. Leo's bodyguards stepped forward from nowhere, their movements too sharp to be improvisation. Marco's car idled across the street, engine low. He watched them through the windshield, cigarette ember glowing red in the dark. "He's testing you," Crystal said. "No," Leo answered, his voice turning steel. "He's testing himself." A moment later, Marco's car pulled away, slow and deliberate. Leo exhaled. "It's starting." "What is?" "The kind of war that doesn't stay in alleys." He glanced at her. "You should stay with me tonight." "I don't hide." "Not hide," he said. "Plan." Crystal hesitated, then nodded. "Fine. But if your plan involves using me as bait again—" "Never," he interrupted. "You're not a weapon." She lifted her chin. "Good. Because I fight better when it's my choice." Leo's mouth curved, proud and sad all at once. "I know." Outside, the rain returned. Inside, the hum of the neon sign steadied like a heartbeat learning its rhythm again. But when Crystal got home later that night, the welcome mat wasn't empty. A white chess pawn stood in the center of a ring of salt. Taped beneath it was a torn strip from a ledger. 3 names printed neatly. One of them was Jamie Miller. She didn't scream. She just stared until her knees forgot how to lock. And miles away, Leo stared at his phone, at a message from an unknown number. "It's not about you anymore," It's about who you die for. The game had changed, and this time the move belonged to Marco. For a long second, Crystal only saw the white pawn and the ring of salt, as if the night had decided to speak in symbols. Then her eyes found the torn ledger strip and the neat ink that made her brother into a line item. Jamie Miller. Her body remembered how to move before her mind did. She scooped the pawn and paper into a sandwich bag, locked the door twice, and ran, down 2 flights, through the wet breath of the stairwell, out to the street where cabs stitched the city together with yellow thread. She texted Leo one word: now. The black sedan ghosted to the curb like it had been idling in fate. The door opened and she slid in. Heart knocking. Leo didn't ask what. She handed him the bag. He looked at the pawn, the salt dust, the name, and his face didn't change so much as simplify. "Where is Jamie?" he asked. "At the thrift center," she said. "Sorting books. He trusts the sign-in sheet more than people." Leo made a call without looking away from her. 2 cars. Center first. No uniforms. No sirens. If anyone lays a hand on the kid, I will personally teach them not to have hands. The car bit the wet street. Crystal pressed her palms to her knees until her fingers tingled. "This is Marco," she said. "I want that to be wrong," he answered. But want has never been a reliable witness. They found Jamie in the back room, humming under his breath, arranging paperbacks by an alphabet only he understood. When he saw Crystal, he brightened, then noticed the way her mouth didn't. "Hey," he said carefully, the way he spoke when the room's temperature changed. "Did I do something wrong?" "You did everything right," she said, pulling him into a hug that was too tight and didn't apologize for it. "We're going for a drive. Our friend is getting pizza." Jamie peered at Leo. "With jalapenos?" Leo crouched without hesitation. Savage amounts. On the sidewalk, the day held its breath. A gray van rolled the corner too smooth, too early. The side door stuttered open. 2 men stepped down, the kind who moved like they'd practiced danger in mirrors. Leo's hand touched Crystal's back. "Move left." And his people unfolded from trash shadows like punctuation marks you only notice at the end of a sentence. A shout. A wrong decision. Metal spoke once, twice. 1 man stumbled, the other ran. Jamie's hands flew to his ears. Crystal pulled him close and whispered, "Saturn has rings, okay? We count them when we get home." Silence fell, stunned and thin. Leo scanned faces, windows, corners. He nodded once. The street began to breathe again. "This wasn't Viscari," he said. "He likes crowds and fireworks. This had patience. This had history." "Marco," Crystal said, voice low. Leo's jaw worked, a muscle remembering old fights. "He knows my roots, my reflexes, what I will protect first." "Jamie," she said, throat tight. "Jamie," he agreed. They took Jamie to a townhouse that remembered music and cedar. It had a bookshelf wall and a couch that didn't judge. Leo ordered jalapeno pizza like a contract. Jamie settled in with a stack of space books and the calm that comes from being told exactly what will happen next. Crystal stood in the doorway, watching the rise and fall of her brother's shoulders, the small movements that meant he was okay. Leo watched her, not the room. "He's safe," he said. "Safety is a verb," she replied. "Keep doing it." He let that land, then led her down the hall to a study that smelled faintly of ink and rain. On the desk, traffic cam stills, courier logs, timestamps arranged in a grid. He tapped a corner image. Marco's sedan where it shouldn't be, the timestamp wrong for any errand. "I wanted this to be noise," he said quietly. "It isn't." "Why?" she asked, not letting go of anger long enough to be gentle. "Why you?" He took a breath that had memory in it. "My father killed Marco's brother," he said. "Years ago. War that dressed itself as justice. I told myself Marco forgave. He told me the same. Boys mistake loyalty for anesthesia." "And now he wants to cut where you're soft," she said. "Me, Jamie." "And the city," Leo added. "He wants to prove that the rules I wrote don't hold, that I am the same as the man who made me." "Are you?" she asked. He didn't blink. I am trying not to be. Her phone buzzed on the desk. Come alone if you want Jamie's name erased. Doc 17, midnight. A second message landed on Leo's phone. Same words, same time. Attached, a photo of a ledger page with Jamie Miller typed. Marco's hand holding a pen in the corner of the frame like a signature that didn't need ink. Crystal's breath shook once. She pinned it down. He wants me to walk into a trap. He wants me to follow, Leo said, because I always do when someone writes a name I love. You're going, she said. Yes. Then I'm going, she said, and we are not playing his script. He studied her face, the refusal to be useful to someone else's cruelty. You won't be bait, he said. Not tonight. Not any night. I'll be a witness, she said. I'll be the thing that hears. She touched the locket. We use this. We make him say the quiet parts where everyone can hear. Leo's mouth tilted. Approval, regret. Alvarez can catch on a channel he shouldn't have, he said. If the right words leave Marco's mouth, the city won't be able to pretend it didn't hear them. They spent the late afternoon turning silence into a plan. The tech rewired the locket's tiny heart to ride a public safety frequency with zero delay. Alvarez arrived like weather, damp and inevitable. He looked at the board, at the stills, at Crystal's steady eyes. You're about to make my life very complicated, he said. Complicated is better than dead, Crystal answered. Alvarez nodded once. I can't bless this, he said to Leo, but I can fail to stop it. You'll bring cuffs, Leo said. I'll bring ears, Alvarez corrected. Cuffs are easy. Ears are what judges trust when paper gets shy. They briefed Jamie like you brief the only honest thing in a crooked room. We're getting pizza, Leo said. Then we're watching a space documentary that lies about the sound of rockets. Jamie's mouth twitched. Rockets are loud. On TV, they're too polite, Leo said solemnly. We'll complain to the director. Jamie accepted this mission with gravity. Crystal tucked the Queen of Hearts envelope from Viscari into a drawer she locked without explaining. The day began to slope toward night. Dusk bled out. The river found its old bruise color. Doc 17 slept under sodium lamps like a beast with one eye open. On the drive, nobody filled the car with words they couldn't take back. Crystal counted intersections. Leo counted exits. Somewhere, a different clock ticked toward midnight like it had been promised a show. They parked a block out. Leo's people salted the shadows, patient and unshowy. Alvarez's unmarked sedan glided into a dark mouth of street and died there, lights off, law quiet as an apology. Rules, Leo said softly. Say them, Crystal replied. You never step ahead of me, he said. If I say down, you're already on the ground. If the air changes, you move, even if you don't know why. And you? She asked. I don't kill him tonight, he said. Even if I want to. I want the words first. The truth, not just the correction. Good, she said, because the city needs to hear him choose. They walked the last yards together, wind combing Crystal's hair into thin lines of light. The locket sat against her pulse, a small, awake thing. Leo stood at the pier's edge, posture easy enough to be misread by a fool. He wasn't counting men. He was counting angles. Footsteps approached from between two containers. Marco stepped into the light with his hands empty and his face arranged for old friends. For a half-breath, Crystal saw what had been, a boy with scraped knuckles and a best friend with plans. Then she saw what was. You came, Marco said, like this was a favor. I always come for family, Leo answered, voice so calm only Crystal heard where it cracked. Marco let his eyes slide to Crystal. She cleans up well, he said. Does she know what you are when no one is watching? She knows what you are when everyone is, Crystal said. Pick a sentence that does not use my brother. Marco smiled at that, small, appreciative. I like her. Shame. Say Jamie's name, Leo said. Say what you wrote and why. You want a confession? Marco spread his hands. You want me to say ledger and bait, and the way you break when someone threatens what you pretend you don't have? His voice warmed, the sound of a man enjoying his own story. I learned from the best, Leo. Your father would be proud. The locket hummed. Alvarez's radio hissed a little in the distance, as if a wolf had lifted its head. "Take his name out of your mouth," Leo said, and for the first time Crystal heard the monster the city feared. Not volume, gravity. Marco tilted his head, curious. "There he is," he said. "The boy who swore to keep me safe from the man who raised him. Tell me, does she know whose blood paid your first suit?" He nodded toward Crystal. "Does Jamie?" Crystal felt heat rise, anger bright and pure. "Say his name," she said, steady. "Say Jamie. Say you put him on your paper to hurt someone else." "Jamie," Marco said, savoring it. "Ledger. Hurt." He brushed imaginary dust from his sleeve. "Satisfied?" Far off, a door opened on a quiet street that would no longer be quiet in the morning. Alvarez's men moved like shadows learning to be human. The dock's air shifted, filled with the static of consequences. Marco took a step back, casual, and misjudged the slick at the pier's edge. His shoe slid, the water grabbing at balance. Leo lunged without thinking, hand snapping around Marco's forearm. "You should let me drown," Marco hissed. "I don't drown, family," Leo said, hauling him level. His breath fogged cold. "I bury grief, not people." For the first time, Marco looked uncertain. He glanced at Crystal, at the locket, at the way the night seemed to be listening. "You wired her." "She wired herself," Leo said. "I asked for nothing she didn't offer." Somewhere behind them, a safety clicked off, a cop's, a gunman's, a choice. The dock held its breath. Marco's face hardened. "You won't get to forgive yourself for this." "No," Leo said, "but I will get to stop repeating it." Red and blue fatigue lit the far end of the pier without siren. Alvarez stepped into the open with two officers, guns down, eyes up. "Evening, gentlemen," he said. To Marco, "Keep talking." Marco's mouth shaped a curse. He looked like a man who'd arrived at a game and found the pieces glued to the board. His gaze slid past Alvarez to the river, to the city, to a life he'd meant to steal back and had somehow lost further. Crystal felt the wind shift and knew the night had chosen its slope. She also knew this wasn't over. Vescari's card waited in a drawer. The Queen would not stay quiet. Leo eased Marco's arm free, eyes on Crystal, a question she didn't have to answer. "You good?" She nodded once. "Good enough to finish, not enough to forget." Alvarez's voice lowered. "The way you talk to feral dogs and gods. Mr. Santori, we can do this polite. Or we can do it with paperwork that bleeds." He lifted a hand. The officers advanced on patience. Marco laughed, sharp, lonely. "You think any of this changes what he is?" He jerked his chin at Leo. Crystal spoke before Leo could. "It changes what he chooses." Marco's eyes met hers, and for a heartbeat she saw the boy who had learned to make himself a knife because knives don't cry. Then the moment died and the man returned. He held out his wrists like a dare. As the cuffs clicked, a phone buzzed in Leo's pocket. Unknown number. One line. Midnight was a rehearsal. "See you at dawn." Dawn arrived looking older than it should, the river wearing a tired sheet of pewter. Alvarez's people quietly cleared Dock 17. Cones, tape, jargon. While the city yawned and pretended not to notice the shape of a night it would learn about later. Marco sat cuffed in the back of a cruiser, a profile of hard angles and leftover boy. Leo's phone still glowed with the last message. Midnight was a rehearsal. "See you at dawn." Crystal read it once and felt the day lean. "He watched," she said. "Vescari always watches," Leo answered. "He trades patience like a currency." Alvarez approached, coat unbuttoned, eyes red from hours he wouldn't get back. "We've got enough," he said, quiet. "The lockets feed, the ledger photos, the courier logs. I can't promise a straight line in court, but I can promise a line." "It'll hold," Crystal said, "because sometimes hope needs someone to speak for it." Alvarez tipped his head toward Leo. "You're not off my board," he warned. "Change is expensive." "I'll pay," Leo replied. "In cash and in rules." They left before headlines could find them. A pale gold light leaked between buildings as if morning were apologizing for being late. The car cut through a city humming up to speed. Bakeries, buses, a jogger whose breath made fog above the river. Jamie would be waking soon, counting the parts of his morning that always happened in the same order. At the safe townhouse, Jamie lay sprawled on the couch, one hand on an open book about astronauts, jalapeno pizza crusts stacked like small monuments. He blinked awake, squinted and smiled. Did the rockets sound right this time? Closer, Leo said, straight-faced. We filed a complaint. Jamie nodded, satisfied. Good. Crystal knelt and smoothed his hair the way you do when you need to prove to your hands that the person you love is still here. We're going home in a bit, Jay, she said. Then breakfast. With donuts? He asked, hopeful. Leo pretended to think. Savage. Jamie grinned, mission accomplished, and padded to the bathroom, humming. The small normality of it knocked something loose in Crystal's chest. Relief, grief, gratitude, all using the same door. She turned to Leo. You're going to burn old contracts. Yes. And write new ones that don't squeeze the breath out of strangers. Yes. And you'll keep your word when it's inconvenient. I'll start when it hurts, he said, because easy promises are cheap. Beginning now. Beginning before sunrise, she corrected, because she remembered. He looked at her as if that line had stitched something inside him. Then come watch. They drove to Delaney's while the city rubbed sleep from its eyes. The owner, who had always liked the cash more than the responsibility, stood out front with a creased face and a pen he couldn't bring himself to use. Leo made the decision easier. Lawyers came with clean papers and a clause that had Crystal's name where anyone else's would have put his. I'm not taking a gift, she said, hands tight at her sides. It isn't one, Leo replied. It's a transaction with teeth. You pay me back, at terms that won't crush you. I get out of your way and out of your pocket. You run it, you build it. No one lets you. It's yours. She read the pages 3 times, slow. The contracts protected the staff too. Healthcare, hours, safety protocols that looked like dignity written down. Lynn cried a little. Paul pretended not to. Crystal signed her name and felt metal click in a lock somewhere she couldn't see. They replaced the open sign at 7. Morning lined up in raincoats and work boots, in joggers and construction vests, and a woman in a suit who always ordered coffee and sat with her back to the wall. Jamie set up a small book rack with a cardboard sign in his careful print. Paperbacks $1.50. Please use the basket. Leo tried to wipe a table. Crystal took the rag from him, laughing. He didn't mind being bad at something for once. Alvarez stopped in, paid cash, and left a card by the tip jar. For emergencies that involve paperwork, he said. Crystal slipped it under the register, next to a photo of her mother the room had learned to respect. By 10, the place thrummed. The story of the blackout already belonged to the city rumor mill, faulty wiring, a prank. The grid hiccuped. And for once the lie did no harm. The red dot on the window had been scrubbed clean. Crystal taped a napkin near the register, an eye in blue pen looking out at the room. She drew a second eye beside it and wrote underneath, small, we see you too. Leo watched customers, exits, reflections in the pie dome, old habits that would take time to unlearn. Between orders, he stepped into the alley and made calls that sounded like dismantling. One by one, he rearranged the agreements that had kept him powerful and sleepless. No more filming fear to make markets. No more squeezing families to pay for a war no one had voted for. He shifted money into legitimate fronts he could say out loud. Men complained. He let them. Others nodded, relieved to be told they could stop being monsters. When he came back in, powdered sugar dusted his sleeve. Crystal brushed it off with a thumb. You have powdered sugar on your reputation, she said. Better than blood, he answered, surprised to find it true. A lull arrived at noon, the kind that makes rooms yawn. Leo leaned on the counter, tired in a way he'd never allowed himself to admit. I don't know what to call what I am trying to be, he said. Call it a man, Crystal said. Not a myth, not a monster. See if the word fits. It might not fit at first, he warned. Then tailor it, she said. You own good suits. His laugh was quiet and rare. He reached for her hand without ceremony, laced their fingers, and let the room see what it would. No claim. Agreement. By evening, the brass plate on the door had changed. Miller's in small letters that caught the light and threw it back. The staff stayed late to toast ginger ale in paper cups. Jamie held up a donut like a moon and announced, "This is my favorite planet." No one corrected him. They closed with the ragged joy of survivors. Leo turned the sign. Crystal counted the till, then stopped because trust for once felt like efficiency. She slid the deadbolt and breathed in the quiet. Espresso, sugar, rain. On the counter, Leo placed a small framed photo. Him, Crystal, Jamie, and a thrift store astronaut helmet too big for all of them. No caption. Some truths didn't need one. You staying? He asked, softer than the city would believe. I was already planning to, she said. He kissed her the way decisions are sealed, gently, on purpose. When they broke, the window held their reflection. Two people who had been many things and were trying to be new ones. Outside, the rain rehearsed another act. Far across town, a man with a tidy signature, Vescary, sat at a desk and shuffled a deck in which the Queen of Hearts had teeth. He had watched the doc. He had learned. He would test again. Darkness studies the light that beats it because it hates homework. Inside, Leo locked the alley door and did the small things that keep monsters outside. Checked the rear latch, set the alarm, flipped the kitchen switch that made the walk-in hum. Safety is a verb. He was learning. Crystal untied her apron and hung it on a hook with a satisfaction she could drink. She touched the locket at her throat, now inert. A tool, not a threat, and left it there for reasons she didn't examine too closely. Tomorrow? Leo asked, leaning against the door jamb, a man who looked his age for once. Starts before sunrise, she said. Then I'll be early, he promised, with donuts. Savage, she replied, and he smiled like a boy who'd been given a decent world for the first time. They stepped out to the sidewalk. The city smelled like wet stone and second chances. Leo laced his fingers with hers. They walked with the kind of unshowy stubbornness that makes change possible. In the darkened diner window, the letters Miller's caught a street lamp and threw brightness into the street as if to insist. This little circle of glass is ours. We paid for it with fear and chose not to keep paying. At 5 the next morning, Crystal unlocked the door to set the first pot brewing. A plain envelope slid under the threshold as if it had been waiting for dawn. She bent, picked it up, and opened it with the same butter knife she used for cakes. Inside, a single playing card. Queen of Hearts. On the back, a message in a tidy hand that never smudged. Every king needs a queen. Let's see how you protect yours. V. Crystal's mouth pressed into something that might one day be a smile and might one day be a snarl. She taped the card to the inside of the register where only she and Leo would see it. Then she turned on the lights, filled the pastry case, and propped the door wide for morning, because the best answer is sometimes a room full of people choosing to come in. The bell chimed. The first customer stepped onto clean tile. Behind the counter, the espresso machine began to sing. If you enjoy stories like this, take a moment to subscribe to the channel. That's how I'll know you truly liked it. Even if you're watching on your TV, grab a second to join this family of fans who love emotional and heartfelt stories. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more tales like this one.